Um, as far as planning for this unit, it was hard. I can't lie, it was hard from the beginning. And the reason is because the entire lesson, units and learning targets and end date, everything had to be decided before we started. Planning backwards isn't something I typically do. Um, and I wasted a lot of time, I can see now in the past, by planning just day to day instead of with an end point decided. The front end planning was hard, but it was the best thing. I am so glad that I planned from the end and worked backwards. Everything made much more sense. And when I got into the unit, each day I just had to open up my calendar and make small adjustments to what had happened before, but I knew exactly what was going to happen each day, and the kids knew what was going to happen each day. We made more progress that way. We got a lot more done.
As far as planning went, I found it was nice to bounce ideas off someone, working with Callie, and to come up with something original. It was very thought provoking. It challenged me as a teacher in a way that I haven't been challenged since I was probably first few years of teaching. Um, it made me really have to think as a teacher of all the different situations that could occur.
The planning phase of my PBL unit was really different than how I've done planning in other units. I felt like, honestly, like I had never planned for a unit like this before. And so I had to completely rethink how I was structuring my learning targets and how I was going to apply those in the different classes. I came up with the learning targets that I wanted as like overarching learning targets, and then the supporting targets, and then specific tasks that I wanted the students to complete to have the learning targets met. And by doing that with what I wanted their end goal to be, it helped me kind of structure my PBL unit around here are the skills, but how can I incorporate the PBL aspects into this unit? And so it was really different, and Callie can actually attest that I was very frustrated at times. And in fact, it was probably one of the most challenging teaching experiences I've had in a long time.
I had no idea what their end product would be. I had no idea what pathway they might take in response to the prompts that I gave them. And in fact, I didn't even know 100% what that prompt was going to be because I allowed that to be student constructed ahead of time. So that was scary, to put it mildly, not being able to anticipate roadblocks, problems, and prep them ahead of time for those things. But it was different than my normal units because I don't normally sit down and plan a whole unit at once. So this was different because just having to know the beginning product to the end product before I even start. I just started with my main idea was students being able to solve systems of equations. So then from there I decided, well, what 3 things do my kids have to know to be successful at this? And then within those 3 big main ideas, I broke it down into what smaller pieces do they need to reach that main goal. And that's how I ended up making the project. They kind of had different checkpoints, and so they had to do so much work on their own, and then I would check it to see if they're on the right path or not, and then they would move on to the next piece. So with the planning, I was able to really just sit down for like 3 days straight with nothing else going on, and just figuring out how I wanted each of my units or different checkpoints to look.
Well, the first thing I want to point out is that's what a good PBL does. It puts the students in the position to surprise you. If you design a unit where you know the answer to every question you ask your students, or you know how every assignment or project in the unit should look, you're not putting them in that position to impress you. Whereas a well-designed PBL gives them that creativity and openness to really show off what they know or what they can learn.
I was actually excited to go into class. I was surprised by what they could do. I was surprised by what they could come up with without me telling them what to think or telling them what to find. We were having fun, and my kids are learning. I have kids actually asking to help me plan future units. What kid does that? So this experience has been kind of altering to my teaching life. And after doing this for 16 years, to have something change my students and change me has had a really great impact.
So one of the cool things that I experienced while doing PBL was an increase in the ownership that students took of the work that they were doing. So we tried to give them a lot of choice in the experiments that they could choose to do. And at first, they really didn't like that. They wanted to be told what to do, and they were uncomfortable with having to make choices. But as we went along, what we saw was that the kids' ability to explain what they were doing and why they were doing was a lot higher than previous things we've done. And it was because they were making the choices. So, we even saw when administrators would walk in the room and sit down, next to that one kid that you just hope they don't go near. A lot of times that kid they could tell you what was happening in class and what they were doing because they were the ones that had made the decision on what they wanted to do with their time. So that was a really cool thing that we saw as we did the PBL unit.
Again, we're trying to change a complete mindset of instead of taking a test and being done with that knowledge, but building on that knowledge. And so that's taking some time.
I had everything laid out of what the kids were going to do day to day, but what it was going to look like within the classroom changed kind of on the fly. As soon as something would happen, I would have to decide how I wanted that to look, or I would think I know what I'm going to have happen, and then as soon as a student asked a question, I would just completely change it and just I went through in their binder and ripped out pages and added new pages in just from going through and seeing what was better. So just it kept me on my toes a lot, but it was awesome because everything was already done. So I was able to take that extra time to just kind of think, is this the best or do I want to make it better? Since everything was planned before we even started the project.
I have so much respect for my students after this PBL experience and what they're truly capable of. They don't need me to the extent that I was kind of forcing myself into their educational experience. So being comfortable and giving them exciting prompts and things that will really invest them in their learning and motivate them intrinsically, but then being comfortable stepping back and letting them take the wheel and guide their own learning and kind of customize that experience. I hadn't done much of that before, so it's a little scary to just end the day and someone asks you, what are you doing in class? And you're like, oh, we're doing this. And they're like, oh, what's the next step? And you go, I have no idea. Because the students are deciding that. They were able to come up with their products, come up with really complex thinking along the way. And instead of being the center of it all, the students were the center, and I was just more of a coach or facilitator of that thinking, which was a really awesome experience.
It made me excited again to plan little things like this. The fact that they had those aha moments, and I could see it in their eyes. I could see them say, oh, this really did happen. They'd ask me. They were asking me the questions instead of me asking them the questions.
This teaching and learning experience was different because it required a lot more flexibility on my part, and I'm a very structured planner, and what I have set from the beginning is sometimes what I would follow. And so it was really different to kind of lighten up a little bit and let what the students were telling me and let this just kind of flow naturally instead of having a calendar with very strict times that they did things. And as far as learning for the kids, it was a lot of independent work. And the kids actually said to me, I feel like I'm doing everything and you're not doing very much. And I was like, okay, but isn't that the way school is supposed to be? You are supposed to be doing the learning and I am there as a support. And when I said that to this kid, he agreed and said that he just leaves class really mentally tired. And I think that's a good thing.
And rather than telling you what I think the students felt throughout the unit, I'm going to read you guys some quotes. So these are actual quotes from my students. They are some of the better quotes, I admit, but these are quotes that they had about their PBL unit. The first one. We started our own experiments prior to having almost any information on the topic at all, which was better and more challenging. The students led the learning instead of the teacher. So even though in other units we had projects similar to this is the first one where Mr. Pierce didn't just tell us what to do or learn. We had to figure it out and teach ourselves. This one says, it was challenging at first, but not too bad. Everything we did helped me understand how objects moved in the air, and it built up to the final challenge of hitting our target. I really like how we were able to choose what experiments we had to do on our own, and let the groups discover things we wanted instead of something we didn't care about. And then the last one says, I like this unit very much because we got to share ideas more than usual. Also, it gave us an almost real-world experience. It gave us some room to spread our wings and discover things on our own. It's really something to know that you're trusted to learn without a teacher as guidance, but who is there if you're stuck and have a question.
There were several things that really surprised me. The first one was I introduced the unit to the freshmen before parent-teacher conferences, which was not intentional. It was just kind of a coincidence, but the awesome part was a couple weeks later, during conferences, I had several parents and grandparents asking me about that project because their son or daughter or granddaughter or whatever had come home talking about it.
Overall, I think that this has been a positive experience as well as a very scary experience in a lot of ways. I just think that teachers need to be able to kind of get out of their comfort zones. And I was always one who was kind of unwilling to do that sometimes because it's comfortable for a reason. And PBL and Callie have really challenged me to think about the way that I am planning and intentionally structuring my units to incorporate things like choice and what their final products will be and making them more authentic.
Overall, I was really happy with the project. I hope I get to do it again next year, and I'm excited. And I think it's just going to be so much better next year because I learned a lot going through it this year.
I had a class that I would describe as Dementors. They were sucking the joy out of me. I was sucking the joy out of them, so I guess that makes me a Dementor too. And we did not like being together. And now that class, because of this PBL unit, are my favorite. We love seeing each other every day. I brag about them constantly. They've even come to me asking to help create new projects and new units. So in that respect, just being able to enjoy my time in class and enjoy my students, it's really changed things for me. So if you get a chance or want to try the PBL unit, small, large, in between, with some of your kids or even with all of them if you can, give it a chance. It is hard work that is actually worth it.